All right, so today I'm going to show you guys how I make burnt ends. Burnt ends are my favorite part of my favorite cut of meat to barbecue. My favorite meat to barbecue is brisket, I think, and by far my favorite part of the brisket is the point versus the flat end. I like them both, but the point is the juiciest. It has the most internal marbling, and it has the most connective tissue and things like that. I just like it the best, and my favorite way to prepare it is as burnt ends. You'll see a lot of videos lately on burnt ends, and you'll see them people using different cuts of meat to do it. Traditionally, and really, burnt ends are the point end of the brisket. They aren't like bologna burnt ends or ham burnt ends or bacon belly burnt ends. There's all kinds of different things people are doing on YouTube right now, and I'm sure those are great and they look good, but I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to properly terming things. Burnt ends, Kansas City style burnt ends, are the dark, barky, crunchy, good, cubed up part of the point of the brisket that's usually sauced up a little bit more than finished off. They're really, really good. Like I say, I'm really excited about this video. I got to work early this morning, got all my web orders and my freight out before the truck got here so I could get this one done today. Little housekeeping before we start. If you're new to this channel or you've never watched any of these videos before, I'm going to show you a few things, resources that other people might already know about. I have a website called penncountyrust.com, and on that website, if you go to the top, there is a charts and resources tab, and when you click on that, there are some charts that you people who are barbecuing are going to want to be download. You'll be really interested in these. One's called Tough Cuts, and one's called Tender Cuts, and then there's a simplified one down here. And the Tough Cuts chart, all three of them really, they have this internal temperature that we're trying to reach when we're barbecuing so that the meat is done and it's tender. These are kind of our endpoints. So I have a Tough Cuts chart for the temperatures you take your Tough Cuts to, and there's a lot of other useful information in here. And then the one for the tender cuts, like chicken or prime rib or ham. And then there's a simplified one if you guys are used to barbecuing and you just want a reminder on the endpoint internal temperatures that these come to. So please go there and download them and use them. They're free, of course. They're on my website. And just one other thing, I do these videos, these how-to barbecue videos academically. I have my own product line, as you can see behind me. These videos are not designed to promote those product lines, although I proudly tout them and I showcase them in most of my videos, but I use other people's things too. This is about teaching people to barbecue and showing them how to have a really good, successful product on their first time. Or if you've barbecued for a while, maybe you'll learn some tips and tricks on here. I'm always learning new things. So that's the housekeeping for anyone who's new to the channel. Back to burnt ends. Today we're going to be cooking a whole packer brisket. I'm going to cook it in my big offset trailer smoker. And we're not going to concentrate on all the ins and outs of everything about cooking a brisket because you can see that in previous videos. I have a brisket video, and for anyone new to this channel, there's also my first video in this playlist is barbecue techniques, and it shows kind of a deep dive into how to barbecue if you're just getting started. So let's go ahead and start this video. I'm starting with a packer brisket. This is a choice packer brisket. It is an enormous one. Weighed 23 pounds. Which meant it cost $95. Brisket's really high right now, but it's a beast. I mean, look at this thing. It's going to take a little longer to cook than most of them do, but it's got a great point end on it, and that's what I was looking for this video because we're making burnt ends. This is the point over here, and this is the flat. I'm not going to go too deep into how to trim a brisket. Again, you can look at my previous videos. You can look at the previous video I have on smoking a brisket, and I talk about how to trim a brisket, but it's very simple. As you can see, I go all the way around the outside, taking off any large pieces of fat, and this is the meat side of the brisket, and on the meat side of the brisket I take all this little pieces of fat off that I can, and I'm careful when taking the large pieces of fat off not to carve down into the brisket. We don't want to cause any big pockets or anything. And here is the fat side of the brisket. I'll make an exploratory cut here to see how deep that fat goes. And I want to take it down to about a 1/4 inch thick on the flat. So we'll have some good padding on top of that flat for bark to adhere to. See how I'm kind of taking it down to where it's a 1/4 inch thick? These big choice briskets have a lot of external subcutaneous fat on them, so you got to trim it all off. And then I just go around the outside and round it off nicely, take off any little pieces that could burn. That's pretty much all I do. I do a pretty minimal trim on these briskets. There's a little gouge in it left from the factory down there. That's not a problem. So there's our fat side. We're going to be cooking this fat side up. I greatly prefer the taste of bark on the outside of barbecue when it's adhered to fat instead of meat. That's why I cook fat side up, so I can really take care of that bark. We're going to inject it with this is one of my favorite injections, Butcher Barbecue beef injection. And we're going to just inject the entire thing, and then we'll let it sit in the fridge overnight. You don't have to inject it, but like I said, it adds something. It adds a 10% benefit, I think. And man, when you're spending $95 on a piece of meat, you want every 10% that you can get in improving the quality of your end product. And then we're going to go ahead and dry rub it. I'm using my competition barbecue dry rub. It is not available to the market yet, but we're close. This is called Payne County Bark. And it's the one that I use when I compete in Kansas City Barbecue Society sanctioned events. You can use any beef rub that you like, and there's lots of good ones out there. We're just going to get it all on there. You can see it sticks nicely to the excess that comes out of the injection that we did. And then we will put this in the fridge to sit overnight and let that injection kind of do its thing, and let this crust get all gooey on the outside for tomorrow. This is the next morning, and I'm going to build a fire down here using paper towels and used vegetable oil to get it going. I like to do that. I like to keep my vegetable oil after I've deep fried something for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and spray a little bit of pan release vegetable oil on the outside of my firebox, because every other time I barbecue, I like to do this. It puts a nice polymerized layer of protectant on the outside of your firebox. I like to let this fire get going, and I put a few extra pieces up there to go ahead and get hot. There it is after about 5 minutes. You can see how that oil in that paper towel just really provides a great candle. There it is after about 10 minutes. But what we want is a really hot fire, of course, and there it is. This is 45 minutes in. Everything is being depolymerized there. We have all the serangol and glycol we need in our smoke at that point in time. Good, clean smoke. And I always brush off my grill grates with a poly brush, and then I spray pan release or vegetable oil and wipe them off with a paper towel to get it all ready. Cooking at 250 degrees today. The oven is up to temperature. So we'll put this enormous choice brisket that's been sitting in the fridge all night, getting ready with that injection from Butcher Barbecue in it, and my Payne County Bark competition seasoning on the outside. And it's going to be a long cook today because that is an enormous brisket. I generally put a probe thermometer in it just as a reference. We're going to be looking for what the brisket looks like to take it out and put it in the braise later. But I like to have a reference point, so I always put a thermometer in one. All right, here's an hour in. And as you can see, that crust has not set on there yet. So, like we've said in other videos, we don't spray it with any sort of wet mop or spray until that crust is set. But it's starting to darken. This is 2 hours in. Still sitting at 250 on our big trailer smoker. And you can see that crust is now, you can tell by looking at it that it's set on there. But you can drag your fingernail across the back of it, and if it doesn't come off there and it's starting to get crunchy, you know that that bark is set and it's safe to now start spraying it. Today I am just using plain old water. And I'll spray it down about every hour or hour and a half throughout the cooking process today. That is 2 hours in. This is, I think, 8 hours in. I'll be nearing getting done at this point in time. Yeah, I started at 10:15, so we're really close to 8 hours in at this point in time, or 6 hours in, sorry. 6 hours in at this point. So you can see the fat line down there, that dark yellow fat line down here, and I always press on it, and if it comes right back and it doesn't crush under my finger, the fat is not rendered yet. So we're going to go a little longer. We'll take this opportunity to spray it down with some water, but we're going to keep going on this huge brisket until we get some fat rendering. The bark is looking extraordinary. It's coming out really good. So we'll just keep monitoring that fire. Now this is the 8-hour mark. Now you can see that same amount of fat, that same piece of fat down there. See how it's starting to collapse under the weight of the brisket? When it gets there, you can tell your finger will actually go into the fat. It actually crushes it. And this brisket is perfectly ready to take off. See how it crushes that fat? And this dimple I put in it right here stays in. That's how you know the fat's starting to render. And we got a good bark on there, so I'm ready to take these off and give them a braise in an oven. I like to double wrap them in aluminum foil, heavy-duty aluminum foil. And then stick a probe thermometer in it and throw it in the oven. And we're going to wait for 205 or 206 degrees in the deepest part of that point. There's my 265-degree oven. You'll notice I've cooked different size briskets on this channel. As long as you follow the fundamentals with your internal temperatures and following the steps, there's just a few. It doesn't matter what your brisket is shaped like or looks like. It always comes out perfect. I say always, 99% of the time. There's always that wild card brisket. So there we are at 205.5 degrees. This braise is done. It took about 3 more hours. So it was an 11-hour cook today because that brisket was enormous. Now I'm going to do what I like to do for a rest, which is open the oven after I've turned it off and allow some of that heat to escape so we get a little milder environment in there, down hopefully around 200 degrees or less. All that heat just flows out of there when you open the door like this for just a minute. And then we will, with the oven off, close it up and let it sit all night just like this. So there we go. This is the next morning, and it was 10 hours. 10 hours later, this brisket has rested, and all that connective tissue and rendered fat and gelatin has now set back up inside the product. You get a really juicy, moist brisket if you do that with that long rest, and if you add a good injection, that helps. This brisket is still at 100 degrees. Very safe to let them rest like that overnight because it's in a foiled environment. Nothing can get in there. It's heavily salted. It's smoked. It's cured, and it's cured through smoke, and it's been wrapped up in a hot oven all night long. Very safe. Nothing's going to happen in there. And there's our brisket. Fat side up because I like the bark that forms on fat the most. And so I protect the fat. The bark on the bottom down there is sitting in its own juices, and it washes a little bit of the bark off. Just soft as butter. You can tell when a brisket's done perfectly also. I like to skewer them like that with a toothpick or something. But see when I put it on the board how it jiggles? That's because the fat plate in between the point and the flat is completely rendered out. That brisket is perfect. So I'll go ahead and slice the flat. And the flat is, of course, over here on the right. That's where you get our big long slices. And then over here on the left is our point where we'll make our burn ends today. But I'll go ahead and slice the flat. Not going to go into everything about it because I've done that in other videos, and the star of the show today is the point. But you can see this brisket is perfectly moist on the inside, perfectly done, very, very tender. Look at all the moisture. That's a perfectly rendered out piece of flat meat. So we'll slice it up. See how it just comes right apart on you? Just pulls right apart. And look at the moisture inside that flat. The flat is the lean part, and look how moist it is. A lot of that comes from that overnight rest we did. And you can see the bark on that thin layer of fat on the top. Now, as we start to get to the middle, we start to approach the middle of the brisket, we'll see more and more fat and more of that point muscle on there. And that means we're starting to get towards the end of the part that we want to slice into slices. See how we're starting to get into the point a little bit? I want to get a few more slices out of it all. And then we will start working on our burnt ends and get these slices out of our way. There's our point. Look at that. I mean, it came out perfect. This is going to make some great burnt ends. So I'm going to cut it in half. Now the grain runs the opposite way, so this is the way we slice the point. So we turn it 90 degrees like this. And look at all that rendered fat. Everything is just soft. Push your finger right through it, soft, rendered. Now here's how I make burnt ends. I take my point muscle like this, and I cut it into 1.5 inch thick steaks, slabs like this. Really carefully. Just take your time because it's very tender and it'll try and come apart on you. Just use a really sharp knife and really take your time and make nice, big, 1.5 inch thick slabs like this. And do it to the whole point. Look, see how well the fat is rendered in the inside? That's when it gets that accordion shape like that. There are our slabs of point ready to cube up into burnt ends. So we'll slice it right in half like this. And then we will make big, large cubes of barked, crunchy, very moist brisket point. Take your time. Make them one at a time. Nice big cubes. Other people do smaller cubes. Some people don't cook it all the way to where it's rendered. They want it to have a little more texture. I don't. I want them completely soft so they just explode in your mouth whenever you eat them. That's exactly how I like them. This is the most decadent, juicy barbecue meat you can cook, in my opinion. Is a good USDA choice point cut into burnt ends like this. Other people do these a little bit different. This is how I do them. We can always remove any fat that we don't like and just move it out of the way. That's the best thing about cutting it into slabs like this, is you could discard the fat if you want before you cube it. So I'm going to arrange these in a pan, bark side up, and that's what I'm going to do with the entire point of these burnt ends. See how I can cut that seam of fat out in the middle? That's why I like to make these slabs like this. You can cut that big chunk of fat. It's perfectly rendered, but no one wants to eat just a big glob of fat. So you cut it out and you just move it out of the way. And now you're back to your moist burnt ends with that good bark, making cubes. And we're just going to keep on doing this. I'm going to do it again here. Cut that big seam of fat out of the middle and discard it. There's a little burn end on the end with some good bark, so I got that one. And then cube it up. These are just like candy, folks. That real good crunchy bark on the outside we worked so hard for. Good smoke ring on it, plenty of moisture. And I'm just going to load that pan up with these burnt ends, bark side up. This brisket was huge, so I got a ton of burnt ends. The point was massive on this one. That's what they'll each look like. Now I'm going to take a sweet Kansas City style barbecue sauce. This one is my own, but any good sweet smoky sauce will work. And we're going to drizzle it over the top, just on the bark of those burnt ends that we carefully laid in that pan. We want this just on the bark. We don't want to like coat the whole, in my opinion, you don't coat the whole piece of brisket in sauce. But it does amplify it quite a bit, that bark, if you get a little bit of sweet smoky sauce on the top of it. So we'll drizzle this on here and then brush it around with a basting brush and get it nice and coated on there. And then we're going to pop this in a 500-degree oven for about 5 minutes. But see how I'm just coating the bark? I don't want the whole chunk of brisket sauced. It's flavorful enough, trust me. There's plenty of moisture, plenty of injection, plenty of rub and smoke on that. There's my 500-degree oven, and this just takes 5 minutes. And then we're done. This is my version of Kansas City style burnt ends. That is some of the juiciest brisket you will ever eat. It is just like candy. Real showstopper. If you have these at a party or anything like that and you bring it out, I can almost guarantee you the people that eat these, your friends, will have never had brisket or barbecue that tastes like this. It's everything good about good barbecue. Good, crunchy, sweet, has everything that you want on it. So that's how I make Kansas City style burnt ends. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is one of my favorite barbecues. Like I said, it's my favorite barbecue item for sure, and this is my favorite part of the barbecue item. So again, if you're new to this channel, go check out those charts and download them. They're free, of course. Print them off, put them in your kitchen or with your barbecue stuff. And hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.